Welcome to my 7-3 guide, where I will show you how to melee 7-3, mage 7-3, and how to perform accessory methods to both of those. So the basics of 7-3 are to first set 4-1, and then once you've set 4-1, you will replace lance hits with scythe hits, which is effectively the same thing as just doing an extra lance hit and then doing a 3-1 to fix that. You would do the same in 7-3. I would also recommend that you never turn the head right when you do your 3-1 and 7-3. Now this is where it is very optimal to keep the head centered. It allows you to null the flame wall as well as set up a proper acid walk. Now the only thing that does change is if you have to wait a tick at the head or not, and that depends on where you do your last scythe hit. And these tiles highlighted red will show you where you do need to wait a tick at the head. If you'd like to keep it simple when starting, always do your last scythe hit from the index finger tile. This will mean that you won't ever have to wait a tick, and you can switch into your lance when the tile marker disappears. The only time this can really backfire on you is when you're doing flame phase, so I wouldn't really recommend it as a long-term strategy. When adding the scythe, we can utilize more efficient phase starts, and this is because the scythe can offset us closer to the nearest mage cycle, where otherwise you just lose those 1 to 2 ticks. And when I say nearest mage cycle, I'm exclusively talking about on tick and 1 tick behind, as it's not very practical to mage on the other ticks. As we move into the phase starts, let me explain what's meant by crystal cycle, lightning cycle, and teleport cycle. So when you splash on mage hand and you tank a special, the only special that you can get is the cycle that you're on. So for example, these are crystal cycle starts, so that means that should I splash during the mage hand, I'll only be getting a crystal if it's a special. Now the reason I picked melee hammer starts for P2 is that it's a lot simpler, and the cripple check also allows it to be just as optimal, with the added benefit of less switching. As a standard for most players, I would always recommend that you set Crystal Cycle, outside of the few players that would use Lightning Cycle to avoid teleports completely. Now this is just a few examples of phase starts. Most phase starts are just personal preference. Now these are the lightning cycle phase starts. You would only use these if you're also using the no teleport guide that'll be linked in the description. The main benefit is that you don't ever chance a teleport and you don't have to count, but the drawback is that sometimes you can get caught by the lightning. In order to utilize this, you'll need to turn the head in response to specific scenarios that will be detailed in the guide below. When transitioning to the melee hand, you can use the scythe to put yourself 1 tick behind rather than just losing the tick. And of course, if you're already maging 1 tick behind, then you don't have to worry about losing the tick at all. When you kill the mage hand from the melee side, you want to keep yourself from dragging all the way to the end. This will allow you to save a tick that you would otherwise lose. The most important thing about 7 to 3 on Flame Phase is being able to recognize when Olm is scuffed or unscuffed. Here he's scuffed, and you can tell because his head is freezing in between the events. That allows the Flame Wall to land 1 tick after your attack, not on tick with you. When you do your 3 to 1, you should not turn the head right so you can null the Flame Wall. If you don't null during your 3 to 1 and he uses a Flame Wall, you'll end up breaking cycle because there'll be a Flame Wall blocking your path to the melee safe spot. Here's what you have to do when Olm is unscuffed and you're doing 7 to 3 on Flame Phase. You have to drag from this tile to the thumb. After that, you can basically just ignore it, but you will tank a special. Here we can tell that Olm is unscuffed, and that's because he's not freezing for that 1 tick like he was earlier. So in this clip, I'm going to show what you're supposed to do when you get acid walked on the lance hit of melee 7 to 3. This is adapted from the 4 to 1 walk. Now the first and second hit acid walks step up the difficulty a little bit, so here you'll see the second hit acid walk. So here's a first hit acid walk that I made. It's best to try to keep your acid walk as simple as possible, so you'd want to do what's comfortable for you. So the basic concept of Mage 7 to 3 is the same as Melee 7 to 3, except you're going to trade your 3 Lance hits for 3 Mage hits instead. Since Mage 7 to 3 operates 1 tick ahead of Melee 7 to 3, you'll always be able to dodge the Flame Wall regardless of if it's scuffed or not. And this is why it'll require specific phase starts in order to set this up. But since Mage 7 to 3 operates in the 4 to 1 cycle, you can use popular setups for setting 4 to 1 and then transition into Mage 7 to 3. You just simply set up 4 to 1, you do 1 lance hit and then 3 scythe hits and you're good to go. This also means that if you make a big mistake and you break cycle completely, you'll always be able to get back in cycle by setting up 4 to 1. You can also set up Mage 7 to 3 without even using a 4-tick weapon. For 1 spec, you do 1 hammer, then 5 scythes and run. For the 2 hammer Mage 7 to 3 starts, I'm going to show the ones that skip the lightning because it's a lot easier to deal with. So your starts will vary a little bit depending on whether Olm is scuffed or not, but you're going to do 2 hammers and 7 scythes. And here's the unscuffed version of the previous start. So for this hit, you're going to have to drag to the thumb because you're going to be on tick with this auto and Olm is unscuffed. Similarly to how you would in Melee 7 to 3. But if Olm does use the Flame Wall in this auto, you're just going to get lightning and you're going to leave at the same scythe hit you normally would. One thing that you can do when you're maging on tick, you can use the scythe to start maging 1 tick behind. And to do this, you just replace the mage hit that you'd normally do with a thumb with a scythe hit, and then you'd start maging one tick behind from there. Should you lose a tick or need to spec mid-phase, you can always trade a scythe hit for a mage hit, and you'll effectively steal a tick, like I do here. Now, as far as acid walking goes in Mage 7-3, most players just kinda end up freestyling it, but there are specific walks that take less damage than others, and some that take no damage. And the reason why I'm showing my pathing over like Kirby's pathing that accommodates for all the acid walks is because his pathing requires you to zoom out a little bit more than I tend to like. That being said, his pathing will be linked in the description because it is still very useful and very strong. I didn't include head phase transitions, and this is because killing the mage hand second isn't optimal. And that's because Ulm checks if the hands are dead every 2 ticks, which means there would be 2 ticks where your first bow hit would heal even if you did the transition correctly. And when finishing the melee hand with Scythe, you can't exactly control the tick that you're going to end on. So you'll always want to kill the melee hand second to prevent either losing a tick so your bow hit won't heal, or simply healing the head by mistake. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Discord, Twitch, and in the YouTube comments. Thanks for watching.